We continue to talk boxing this Thursday lunchtime. Simon, myself, and we're in the company of the legend commentator, Adam Smith, legendary commentator who is with us all the way through until 1 o'clock. We are talking in this instance about pay-per-view. Where are we going with pay-per-view? Pay-per-view and what you're asked to pay to watch a fight. What you're prepared to pay to watch a fight. Quite recently, the man who's recognised as changing the whole face of world boxing in Saudi Arabia, of course, he resides, but his reach is far. Turki Alalshikh spoke about pay-per-view pricing. This was him.
What I dream, the pay-per-view with good price, to make the fans happy and subscribe and watch it legally. Usually, when I see the pay-per-view high, usually a lot of numbers going and watch the fights illegally. And this is not healthy for boxing and for the platform and for everyone. My dream and what I will try to push a Riyadh season card to have our show less than 20 pounds in England and less than $20 around the world.
So that was Turki Alalshikh telling us how he views pay-per-view in terms of the pricing of it and what is reasonable, what's deemed to be reasonable to the individuals out there, the many of them who want to buy the fight and watch a fight, whatever fight that is. Let's talk about this fight, Simon. Beterbiev Bivol 2 in February the 22nd generated 340,000 pay-per-view buys worldwide. What's your take in that? Does that resonate with you that equals success?
The fight card in and of itself, in terms of quality, exhibited success, but it was very much a fight card that was for boxing aficionados that understood who was fighting and why they were fighting. You've got Beterbiev and Bivol that are fighting in a division that, whilst we got lots of heritage with it because of John Conte and people at that time, it's not the stellar division. And whilst they're sports superstars in their space, they're not transcending the sport as some others do. So it was always going to be a difficult card, despite the brilliance of the card, despite the brilliant first fight of Callum Smith versus Josh Boatsy. And we go through all the fights and go, wow, 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 wow.
Yeah.
You know, but they didn't translate. And this is one of the questions that I always thought when I spoke to Turki Alalshikh about the size of this marketplace and where he thinks he's going to grow it to and how big the parochial nature of this sport can become. This is seed capital for him establishing himself as one of the major thinkers in boxing by putting a fight card like this. It wasn't about the commercial returns for him because ultimately, 340,000 buys at £20 a buy is 8.8 million. It doesn't pay Bivol and Beterbiev.
No.
But that wasn't the purpose of that. The purpose of that for him was that he can and he wants to and he's establishing other things.
It shows, though, to me that that's one for the purists, Beterbiev Bivol, but it doesn't always capture the imagination like crossover fights or freak shows.
Eubank Benn, which will be huge. Casual fight and the story, a hook. Bivol and Beterbiev, not the biggest personalities, but the most beautiful of fighters. And as Simon rightly said, a division which hasn't been sexy, I guess, in the past, or not for a long time. And I think that the fight card was, when I saw it on paper, before the late changes, was probably the best I'd ever seen going back in history.
Yeah, it was built as that, Adam.
The Don King cards, the Frank Warren cards.
The best ever.
Phenomenal. But it was a tradie card, as Simon said, for the boxing aficionados.
So second guess it for me. Eubank Benn. What will it get?
Big. $750,000 probably. I mean, we used to look in pay-per-view terms at Sky Sports box office, or Sky box office before that. We used to look at sort of, if you hit 200,000, Dillian White will get the 250 mark. That's a really good solid pay-per-view. $500,000 for Kell Brook and Amir Khan. Very good. AJ was more the sort of 750 to $1 million. And then the big ones would be 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. You're talking about your Mayweather and Hatton or those sort of nights. But
Mayweather Pacquiao,
yes,
4.6 million buys
worldwide. Yeah, worldwide.
Yeah, but this was for Bivol Beterbiev was 340,000 worldwide.
But what we're saying is exactly that if you walk down the streets, people don't know who Bivol and Beterbiev are apart from hardcore fight fans. They do know who Eubank and Benn are because of the names. They do know Fury and Joshua. Those sort of fights are for the casuals. They will do better on pay-per-view. But I totally agree with Simon that Turki Alalshikh wanted to put the best fight card on to show what he wants to do in the future months.
Right.
And that is that he wants to open up boxing, put the best against the best, and try and get as many viewers as he can to go in. Illegal streaming was one of the big problems at Sky. You know that. The pirate streaming. We didn't want that. We wanted them to enjoy the HD product that we put on, all the countdown shows up to the big night. We wanted them to have that Sky experience. But if you illegally stream it, you lose all of that, and the fighters ultimately lose out too, as well as the broadcasters. So what Turkey's trying to do is he's trying to limit the amount of costs you put for pay-per-view, but put the greatest fights on. Very difficult, but he's got a lot of money.
Where do you think the very concept of pay-per-view is going, Simon?
I mean, it depends what Turki Alalshikh does.
In terms of both the pricing of it.
Well, it depends what market you're talking to. If you're talking to the American marketplace, which is accustomed to paying $70, $80, $90, we complain about paying 19 quid over here. I mean, everything is about quality. Everything's about experience. I mean, the streamers are the challenge for Sky, and ironically, I've written an article in a paper about them this week about the erosion of Sky and where I think they're going. You can nick a few high-profile people that are supplying it, but ultimately, it just keeps popping up left, right, and centre. It's because the price point drives people into piracy. If you want to charge a fixed monthly cost of between 60 and 100 quid to watch sports and then put pay-per-view on top of it, you're going to get a barrier to entry and resistance. Hence the reasons why you've got declining numbers on Sky. So the pay-per-view concept may well be where Sky end in full stop in boxing. It may just be that they do pay-per-view fights and participate in that way rather than other cards. But I think there's an interesting landscape because there is a degree of irony, I don't mean to be facetious, about the Saudis talking about piracy when they spent years being huge, providers of piracy. It's such a row that one of their entities couldn't buy a Premier League football club because of the piracy argument. So there's a bit of an irony about Turkey talking about it.
Yeah.
But he's right.
Yeah.
He is right. But it's a price point, and what he's done is he's exhibited the fact that he wants to make a price point more accessible. We will see when it becomes about translatables into recognised people outside of the sport. If you put Joshua versus Fury, see what kind of numbers those do
you know
on
what
a worldwide audience.
My mind? That was the one that was going through my mind. That would be the one, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And
that would detonate.
I think so. I think it would stop traffic. I think it's exactly and the fact that Tyson Fury is in quotes retired and we're all itching for him to come back and have one more fight, and it's got to be against AJ because it's the fight of this generation. Yeah, 100%. And it'd be fascinating to see what the pay-per-view numbers are for that.
When you talk about scale, right, and look at the numbers that you've got here on this list of fighters, right? Every single one of these fights features an American fighter.
On the ones that hit big figures.
Yeah. And the scale opportunity is that ability. Now, I don't know whether Joshua and Fury translate into the American marketplace, because if you want to get, every single one of the top 5 pay-per-view fights have featured either Floyd Mayweather, or Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield.
But at Sky, happy with the $500,000 for Brook and Khan, and it was late on in their careers, so we could have had 3 of those. That would have been great.
We're talking about a guy in Turki Alalshikh that thinks the marketplace can grow to such a size where you can get big fights that get $1.5 million of the pay-per-views. Yeah. The only way that's going to work is if you've got American interest in what happens.
American interest and storytelling with characters, and this is what he's trying to do with Dana White and the UFC model. You've got to get characters. You've got to have a hook. Why do people want to watch Eubank Benn? It's not the best fight in the world, but it's a great story.
The only challenge with any American involvement now is it'll probably get a bleeding tariff put on it, won't it?
Well, if the Donald has anything to do with that, we're going up to 12:30.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.